Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Quick Bricks NBA DFS podcast, as always, by the good guys over at Fantasy to Gens. You know who I am, Sean Mitchell, at smitchell17 on Twitter. We have a 10-game slate on the NBA docket today. Nice little Friday for us to kick off our weekend. As usual, I'm going to run through the games, talk about the spread, total, and a little bit about the pace before we get kicked off into the positional. So let's go ahead and roll right into this. Lots to talk about, short time to get there. Atlanta at Detroit. Detroit minus 6.5 here at home, 224 total. Atlanta comes in, of course, ranked number 2 in terms of pace over the last 5. Detroit 22nd. So we got a nice, really massive pace up spot here for Detroit at home. Really like some plays for Detroit. Really like a couple plays in Atlanta. Hornets at the Wizards. Wizards minus 1 or 5.5. 232 total on this one. Really good game. Obviously, this one's going to be one we're going to look to stack. Neither team plays a whole lot of defense. Highest total on the board. Charlotte 26 in terms of pace over the last 5. Washington 4th. Pace up spot, massive pace up spot here for Charlotte as well. This one's going to be a good one. Kings at the Nets. We have the Nets coming in here as a home favorite of 3.5. We don't have a total. Waiting on some news. It looks like Bogdan is questionable. A few other questionables in there. Corey Joseph's questionable. So waiting on some news on that one. Here we have another pace up spot, of course, as Sacramento is ranked dead last in terms of pace over their last 5 games. The Nets are ranked 8th. We know the Nets like to run with pace. Spencer Dinwiddie is going to be obviously a good play once again. A few decent plays in there, but of course another pace up spot. We have 3 straight massive pace up spots here, where you have teams that are in the latter half of in terms of pace, and then you have teams that are in the top 10 in terms of pace. So you just got massive pace up spots already. I'm sure that game will probably have a decent total in probably around the 215 to 220ish range is my guess. So it'll probably be a good one, obviously, as well. You have the Heat going into Chicago to play the Bulls. You have Jimmy Butler returning to Chicago. A little revenge if you want to get into that narrative. Miami minus 4.5 here on the road, 214. Not a big spread. Miami's really good. Chicago hasn't really been that good. So pretty interesting to see that Miami's only a 4.5 point favorite here on the road. Miami 27th over their last 5 in terms of pace. Chicago 3rd. Once again, guess what? We have another massive pace up spot. So, interestingly enough, if Chicago can keep it around, that one's really interesting. But Miami has been dang good lately. Spurs at the 76ers. Philadelphia minus 7.5, 222 on that total. Spurs 13th, Philadelphia 24th. Philadelphia has really jumped back in terms of pace. They were in the top 10 a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So, obviously, they've slowed it down a lot. The Spurs have been right around fair to Midland, like right outside the top 10, 14th, 15th. Now they're 13th. And the Spurs have been running with pace. Dejounte Murray going to the bench last game and starting the second, for the second unit was pretty interesting. He actually did better. He only played 19 minutes, but he put up almost 30 fantasy points, which was interesting. Patty Mills getting the start. Nonetheless, that'll be a game that's pretty decent. Like I said, a 222 total right now. That one's like 3rd or 4th on the board. So interesting. Lakers at the Thunder. Lakers come in as a 4.5 point road favorite, 210 on that total. The Lakers are 23rd in terms of pace. OKC 19th. So kind of a mid to the pack, kind of more towards the latter part in terms of pace there in this game. Cavaliers at the Mavericks. Dallas comes in as a massive 10.5 point home favorite. Obviously, we see that doesn't matter to Rick Carlisle because he played Luka almost 30 minutes last game in a total blowout to let him get the triple-double. I'm not really going to talk on it. I faded him, and I told people to fade him, and I'll own that, and I will do it every single time because I won't be playing Luka again tonight because guess what? I don't like the Cavs, and I think the Cavs suck. So, once again, I'll fade Luka, especially on a 10-game slate. I think there's going to be a lot of other ways to go. And hopefully, they don't keep risking Luka in these big blowout games. And, heaven forbid if the guy got hurt. He's in pretty much the MVP right now of the league. And there's no reason to let him play those kind of minutes in a game like that anyway. Celtics at the Nuggets. Denver minus 4.5, 206. Really low total. Boston 14th, Denver 16th. Not really sure why that total is so low. I guess because, last game they held the Rockets to under 100 and they were under 100. It was like 97 to 96. When we thought that the Rockets would pace up the Nuggets, that was not the case. It was the other way around. It looked like Denver actually slowed them down. And that you'll have that at times, especially against teams that are really good. The Nuggets are really good. This game probably won't have a lot of pace. It probably won't be high scoring. But Boston has been in some high scoring games this year. So if it does, it wouldn't surprise me. And obviously I like quite a few plays in that game. So, Warriors at the Jazz, a game I probably will not even touch. Utah minus 16 here at home. No total, as we know. We're waiting on news. Golden State 17th, Utah 9th. So, decently pace game there. But, I'm sorry, Golden State is not good. They just got ravaged by Dallas at home. Not at their home, at Dallas. And now they're going into a team that's probably better than the Mavs right now in the Jazz. Or close to, I should say. Dallas is playing really damn good lately. Either way, it's a very, very big total. Not total, but spread. Rockets at the Clippers for your late night hammer. LA Clips minus 4.5 here at home. 226 on the total. Houston 15th and LA Clippers 11th last 5 terms of pace. Obviously, a game that everybody's going to be looking to play. And, of course, there's going to be a lot of plays in there you want to play. All right, let's jump right into the positionals here. Point guard, Luka, 11.4. Of course, his price has finally moved up to where it should be. Now he's right there, almost at 11,500, where he should be, along with the Harden, who's 11.7, those guys. So, interesting, yeah, he should be up there. LBJ is 11.3 right below him. I would honestly rather play LBJ in this spot than play Luka. I think that the Lakers and the OKC game will be a little bit closer. You got the Lakers on the road here. We know the Thunder don't really guard the point guard spot that well. Either way, Luka over 74 in his last 3 or 4. I'm not denying the guy. I know he's amazing. Do I think that he's going to continue to play in these big blowout games? No, I don't. The Cavs are not good. They're not good at all. And they're right there with the Golden State Warriors, who they just absolutely murdered last game. So to say that I think that the Cavs can keep up, I don't. I really don't at all. So LBJ 11.3, OKC versus the point guards. Like we said, he's had 6 triple-doubles on the season so far, 31% usage on the road, over 62 fantasy points in his last 3 of 5 at home. Yeah, I don't know why I wrote it at home because they're not at home. Anyway, he's been smashing. He can continue to smash. AD came alive last game, put up over 60. Nonetheless, LBJ still did just fine. So, Trae Young only was able to put up 45 last game. I'm still going to go back to him. He actually put up 62.3 against this same Atlanta team in the first game of the year. He's 9-4. It should be a pretty decent game. It's got a decent total on it, 224. We know Detroit is not very good against a point guard spot. They're allowing the 9th most fantasy points to that point guard spot over the last 5. And he's pretty much has almost 34% usage on the road. He really got off to a slow start last game, really didn't do anything in the first half, and then all of a sudden he had like 30 points in the second half. That's just how quick he can go on, like a light switch. He can flip on and he can just start scoring out of nowhere. He's usually going to get you double-digit assists on just about every night. Of course, this is a matchup that he can definitely exploit. So we'll be looking to play Trae Young again. Russell Westbrook at 8.4. Why he is 8.4 again, I don't really know. The Clippers are actually allowing the second most fantasy points to that point guard spot over their last 5 games. I do think that Pat Bev will be on Harden, as I believe they'll be more worried about Harden than Russ. So Russ is going to be in play once again. Second highest total on the board, and we know that, we have to generalize that Pat Bev is probably going to guard Harden. There's just no way around that. He's their best player, and usually Pat Bev guards the best guard. So got to think that he's going to guard him. So you have to really, really like Russ here at 8.4. He's just too cheap. Spencer Dinwiddie, 7.6, continues to start without Kyrie Irving. 35, 51, 41 in his last 3, 30, 33, and 37 minutes. He's had right around a 29% usage rate. Sacramento is allowing the 8th most fantasy points to that point guard spot over the last 5. And guess what? They could be without Corey Joseph tonight, who's actually a more defensive-minded point guard. You might get Yogi Ferrell in there, and I'm sorry to say, but he's not that great on defense. So that is definitely one to watch for, and he will be uber chalk, I'm sure. But, he's there. He's decently cheap still, and, he's at home, which is even better. Jamal Murray at 7.2, I think, is a really nice GPP play. 35 or more in his last 3 or 4. The Celtics just allowed Pat Beverly to have a 14 point, 16 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 blocks, and 2 steal game. Been giving up some pretty decent some pretty decent fantasy point totals to the point guard spot. Jamal Murray here at home, 25 on right around a smidge over 24% usage at home, 24.2. Again, it's not a big total, but I'm totally fine with Jamal Murray. I think he can score 35-plus once again. Mike Conley kind of came alive a little bit last game. We know Golden State is awful against the point guard spot. They're allowing the sixth most over the last 5 games to the point guard spot. He's now put up 30 or more in his last 4 of 5, and he's 6.5K. Cash game worthy. It's hard because, Utah is a 16-point favorite here against Golden State. I'm guessing that Draymond is probably not going to play again. I don't know how his elbow is. Golden State's not good. They're not good at all. So I might shy away from Conley. I just wanted to point out that he's actually been playing really well lately. Dennis Schroeder at 5.5, 37 fantasy points in this same last game against the LA Lakers at LA. Tonight they're playing at home against the Lakers, and he has actually led the team in usage at home with a 25.7% usage rate. Schroeder put up 37 fantasy points on this team last game on the road. So he's going to get the Rondo defense once again Rondo played 27 minutes last game. So he's likely going to see a lot of Rondo. Rondo doesn't play a lot of defense. So Schroeder at 5.5, love him as a tournament play. He is hit and miss. I will say that. He's up and down. He could score 10 points or he could score 35 or 40, but he has shown the upside. He does have the upside, and tonight he's at home. So don't mind Dennis Schroeder. Pat Bev even at 5.4, playing against the Rockets. This is a revenge match here at home. Of course, one of the second highest total on the board here, Pat Bev at 5.4 after a massive monster game, a ceiling game almost for him, 14 points, 16 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 blocks, and 2 steals. Again, Monster game last game. He's only 5.4. We know he's going to play over 30 minutes. And guess what? Houston doesn't play a lot of D. So Pat Bev definitely in play. A couple others down here that I wanted to throw in. Patty Mills at 5.1. If he's continuing to start, he put up 30 fantasy points last game. He's playing the 76ers. They're not exactly a great defensive team. Josh Richardson is still kind of banged up. So Patty Mills at 5.1, if he's going to start again, you got to kind of look there just to be interested in. A couple others, Rondo, like I said, 27 minutes last game, put up 25 fantasy points. He's only 4.6. And then, of course, like I mentioned, Corey Joseph could potentially be out. If he does, you get Yogi Ferrell at 3.5K in a starting role. He's going to be a free square. He's probably going to be a little chalky, but again, he's a free square. And finally, Jalen Brunson. He got quite a bit of run in that blowout last game whenever the only person remaining from the starting team was Luka Doncic. He got to play, I think, like 28 minutes, put up pretty decent numbers. So, in the event that you think that the Cavs get blown out like I do, Brunson could be a nice little tournament play there. So, moving over to the shooting guard, James Harden at 11.7, over 56 in his last 8 of 9, over 62 in his last 6 of 9. I don't really have to talk about Harden. We know this already, but he is probably going to get Pat Bev. Brad Beal at 9.6. Charlotte's D, 56 or more in his last 3 or 4. But I thought it was very freaking interesting that Brad Beal has not topped 40 fantasy points in any home game this year. I don't know why, but he hasn't. And that's definitely something that's very, very alarming. So I thought that was interesting to note, and I probably won't play Brad Beal tonight because of it, because if he does, then he does. But if he don't, it's been a trend. They played 4 or 5, 6 home games already this year, and he's gotten 39, but he's not top 40. A guy that has actually been rolling lately is DeMar DeRozan at 7.7, 45 or more in his last 3 of 5, 45, 54, 32, and 45 in his last 4 on the road, has right around a 25% usage on the road at 24.8. Tonight gets the 76ers in a decently high total game. So, DDR, totally in play. Lou Williams at 6.6. Of course, he crushes the Rockets every single time he plays them. He usually plays better at home. Now that, we got PG and Kawhi in together that last game, get a little sync going, I think Lou's going to be right back to his regular role off the bench, playing, 25 to 30 minutes. Excuse me. He still has a 28.6% usage rate in his last 5 at home. 35 or more in 5 of his last 6 at home, and, of course, getting Houston defense. So, Lou Williams at 6.6. His price went down a little bit. That's good for us. Marcus Smart, I think, is a cash play here in playing in Denver. He's 6.1. He's put up over 33 fantasy points in his last 4 or 5. He scored 15 or more real points in those same 4 or 5. 2 steals or more in his last 3 or 4. So 3 of his last 4 games, he's had at least 2 steals. He hasn't went over that. He's had 2 steals, but he had literally in his 4 games, he's had 7 steals. So on the FanDuel, those FanDuel guys that are listening in, Marcus Smart's probably going to be a really good play once again. Forbes at 5.2. He had a ceiling game last game at 40 fantasy points. Is this something that's going to change here with Deontay Murray going to the bench, Patty Mills coming on? Patty Mills is better a facilitator. He can score, but one of his big things is he's a facilitator. Maybe that's one reason that Pop wanted to put Patty Mills in, move the ball a little bit more, get the offense rolling a little bit more, a lot more movement. And it worked. Forbes at 5.2 put up 19 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists, and 2 steals. 40 fantasy points, over 30 minutes in his last 2 games. Had right around a 20.3% usage rate in that last game. This could be something that is very interesting. If Josh Richardson is out, Forbes is absolutely in play. Bogdan at 7.6. I missed him up in the top because he had a Q tag, but I rounded back through, and I'm Bogdan. Absolutely, if he plays against that Nets defense, right around a smidge under 25% usage in his last 5 at 24.4. His last 4 games, 54, 33, 38, and 53. Obviously, this is going to be a high-paced game. This is a pace-up spot, and I love Bogdan. So, Tyler Hero at 4.9. He had a nice run in his last 2 games. He's had over 30 minutes. The Heat have been kind of crushing people, so he's been getting garbage run. They do play the Bulls tonight in a very, very nice pace-up matchup. We know the Bulls don't guards really well. 22 and 30 fantasy points in his last 2. His price isn't exactly where you would want it, but nonetheless, if we think that Miami might get a nice lead, we could see a little bit more Hero, whatever the hell his name is. All right, Malik Monk at 4.6, total GPP play here, but we're playing against Washington. It's the highest total on the board. Malik Monk has played at least 22 or more minutes in his last 6. He's put up over 22 fantasy points in his last 5 or 6. So we know he has decent upside. He's put up some 35, 40-point fantasy games. And, of course, like I said, he's playing against Washington. So I think Monk is definitely a GPP play. I think he's a fine GPP play. One guy that I got down here, Garrett Temple at 4.4. It is a revenge match against Sacramento. 24 or more minutes in his last 5, over 20 fantasy points in his last 2 of 3. I probably shouldn't even put him on here, but the guy's getting starter minutes, and it's a revenge game. So, if you just absolutely have to have a play like down there under the 4.5K range, I think he's safe. All right, moving along. Small forward, Kawhi at 9.5. It was interesting to note that Kawhi is actually playing small forward and PG is playing the 4. So that one's a tidbit you might want to remember as far as DVP goes, because Kawhi at 9.5, Houston is allowing the number 1 most fantasy points to the small forward spot on the season. He played 38 minutes in his return, put up 38 fantasy points. It's crazy to think that he can make his value at 9.5 with PG, because PG put up almost 45 and played almost as many minutes. So Kawhi's price is probably going to have to drop before I can go all in. But nonetheless, this is an absolutely great matchup. Jimmy Butler returned to Chicago revenge here, going back to Chicago at 8.3, over 46 in his last 3 or 4, 38 or more minutes in his last 4 or 6. Guys playing tons and tons and tons of minutes. I don't expect anything different tonight. Jaylen Brown at 6'8", over 32 fantasy points in his last 3 or 4, 35 or more minutes in his last 5 or 6. Not just an absolutely great spot against the Nuggets on the road, but I think that it's a decent matchup. Small forward has been giving up decently amounts there with Will Barton in Denver, so I'm totally fine with Jaylen Brown. Bouillon here, Bogdanovic in Utah, just put up 43 last game. He's 6.2. Hopefully he's going on a bit of a run. Looking at his game logs, the guy's been putting up 15 or more total shots in every single game. So the volume is there. He is playing against Golden State, who we know is not good. They're allowing the 8th most fantasy points to that small forward spot. I think Bouillon could put up 30.5 here. So that's something you might want to look at. Will Barton at 6'2". The guy's been absolutely amazing at home. Put up another 30 fantasy points at home in his last game. Boston allowing 9th most of that small forward spot. So Will Barton at home at 6.2. I'm still in on that one. Let's see here. Rolling along. Torian Prince put up a nice little game last game, put up 39 fantasy points. Of course, he gets Sacramento at home tonight. His last 4 home games I thought was really interesting. 39. He had a down game and put up 15. Then 41 and 52. That's his last 4 home games. So do with that what you will, but I think he's a fine play. Bridges at $5K for Charlotte. We know we were trying to get more in that game. He's put up over 25 fantasy points in his last 2. Washington allowing the 10th most fantasy points over the last 5 to that small forward spot. He's been kind of a disappointment this year. I was really high on him coming into the year. Nonetheless, I still think it's a pretty decent play at $5K. Shaq Harrison, his price jumped almost $2K. He's $5K tonight. Played 26 minutes, put up 45.3 fantasy points last game, but it was against Detroit. He had near 24% usage at 23.4, but again, they're playing Miami tonight. Not exactly a great spot, but I mean, if the guy's going to start and get, starter minutes, I don't love it at $5K, but, we saw the upside. It was Detroit, though. Detroit's not very good. So do with that what you will. Finally, last but not least, DeAndre Hunter at 4.9. He just put up 46.3 fantasy points versus Milwaukee. So hopefully that's a good sign of things to come. Detroit, like I said, just allowed 45 fantasy points to Shaq Harrison at the small forward spot. So again, 23.9% usage in his last game there. DeAndre Hunter at 4.9. So, somebody's got to step up for Atlanta. So he has shown that, he's showed upside. I like it. Power forward, AD, 61 last game. Think he's fine. So if you want to play him at 10-1, he's extremely cheap. PG at 8-1, 44.8 in his last game, 37 minutes. Houston, third most fantasy points to the power forward spot over their last 5 games. Obviously. Blake Griffin, I just can't quit at this price at 7.7. He was 7-1 last game, had a little bit of a dud. Now he's 7.7. Atlanta's allowing the 5th most fantasy points to that power forward spot over the last 5. So I'm going back to Blake Griffin. LaMarcus Aldridge at 7Ks. Now he put up 39 fantasy points last game. He's now put up over 31. Or he's played over 31 minutes in his last 7. He's put up a double-double in his last 2 of 3. Maybe we're getting some vintage LaMarcus Aldridge here with Dejounte Murray going to the bench. That opens up a little bit more usage. Dejounte Murray is a high-usage guy. So LaMarcus Aldridge, along with DDR, I think both of those guys got a bump. Eric Paschal at 6.3 played 40 minutes last game versus Dallas. Obviously, Golden State's got to play someone, and he didn't sit whenever the game got out of hand. He played almost all game, played all but 8 minutes. Put up 33 fantasy points. Now he's put up 33, 29, and 43 in his last 3. So Eric Paschal at 6.3, it looks like he's, almost blowout proof. I hope that's the case because at 6.3, even if they are playing Utah, he's still a decent play. Paul Millsap at home. You get home Millsap here at 5.9. We know that his numbers at home are a lot better than on the road. Boston is allowing the 2nd most fantasy points to that power forward spot over the last 5 games. He's put up 30 or more in his last 6. 30 or more fantasy points in his last 6. Paul Millsap is a decent play here. Belicia, 5.7 for the Kings. Over 31 minutes in his last 3 of 4, playing the Nets tonight. 31.5, 39.5, 21.5, and 43 in his last 4. The guy has extreme upside whenever he gets the minutes. He's been getting the minutes, so Belicia I'm totally fine with. Last but not least, Davis Bertans at 5.2. Over 33 fantasy points in his last 2 games. He's playing Charlotte tonight. Again, another part of that Charlotte and Washington stack that you might want to be getting in. He's in there. And we're rolling on to the center spot. Nikolai Jokic at 8.6, 47 points last game. We know Boston doesn't defend the centers really well. They don't have a lot of depth. They do, but they don't. They're just not really good against the center spot. So Jokic here at home once again, 38 or more in his last 4 at home. He's 8.6. He's just too cheap. Again, sorry, John. That was John Impemba from Fantasy Alarm. He is not a big fan of Jokic. But again, this price is just silly. Drummond at 8.5. Put up almost 50 fantasy points in this game, in the first game against Atlanta. I know he didn't have Blake Griffin, but he should absolutely smash this game at 8.5K. This is just too cheap. It's almost time for Drummond to come alive again. He's had a few off games. Good play, Drummond, okay? Rudy Gobert at 8.2, put up 52 fantasy points against the same Golden State team a couple games ago. He was my roster monster, and he absolutely crushed. We know Golden State has not been good against that center spot. So Rudy Gobert, I don't really feel comfy paying 8-2 for him in this matchup, but he's there. Clint Capella at 7.7, I will pay that for him. His price really hasn't moved. It's moved like $500 or $600. He's grabbed over 20 rebounds in his last 5 games. We know that the Clippers aren't good versus centers. Clint Capella could literally be my favorite center play. 40 or more in his last 6. The guy's just been amazing. Like, second highest total on the board. Clint Capella over 20 rebounds in his last 5. 40 or more in his last 6. I just can't wrap my head around his price. Rashawn Holmes at 6'3". We love fading that net center spot, right? Rashawn Holmes played 39 minutes, 34 minutes? Either way, he played over 30 minutes last game against the Suns without Aaron Baines, and he put up 46 fantasy points. Rashawn Holmes against the Nets. And it looks like Jared Allen might be questionable, so that would be interesting to note, because if DeAndre Jordan gets to start, I think you'd almost have to play DeAndre Jordan in that matchup. If DeAndre Jordan is going to play 30 minutes, I want DeAndre Jordan in this matchup, especially a little bit cheaper. So that's something to watch out for. Tristan Thompson at 5'7". We know Dallas doesn't exactly have a big center in Dwight Powell. TT is really good down low. This should be a matchup he can exploit. He's only 5.7. Daniel Tice at 4.9. Of course, Boston, like I said, but he did put up 40 fantasy points last game on an 8.14 rebounds, 6 assists, and 3 steals. I hate to say it, but Denver is not exactly that great against the center spot either. Jokic has not been that good this year as far as defensive wise. Excuse me. Mortiz Wagner at 4.7. Again, another part that you might want to get in on that Washington-Charlotte game. He's only 4.7. He showed his upside 3 games ago when he put up almost 60 fantasy points. We know he has it in him. If the event that Thomas Bryant gets in foul trouble or anything like that, Wagner could pick up more minutes. At 4.7, he's definitely a tournament play. Last but not least, Nerlens Noel at 4.5. He's put up 31.5 and 32 in his last game. 32 in his last 2. 31.5 and 32 in his last 2. Just put up 32 against the Lakers in his last game. Guess who he plays tonight? The Lakers. He's getting a nice run off the bench. So, Nerlens Noel at 4.5K. If you want to play it, I'm totally fine with it. That will do it. That is your Friday edition of the Quick Bricks NBA DFS podcast. It's 27 minutes, so plenty enough, short enough for you guys, keeping it below that 30-minute mark like I like to do. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of news and a lot of stuff to watch for later on in the day. I just wanted to point out, this is a first look type pod. I know I don't want you guys to exactly use it for all of your research because there's going to be a lot of stuff changed throughout the day. So, jump in the chats. I'll be in both of them. We'll talk all day, probably about the slate. Nice big 10-game slate here to kick off our weekend. So I'll talk to you guys. Have a good Friday.